All right. Recording in progress, machine says. All right, so this is all for you, Caroline. We're gonna start with on my screen, Zia, top left, 30 seconds, who you are, what are you doing, why you're here.
No, not 30 seconds. Hi, Zia, I'm from Pakistan and year 17. And what am I doing? I am working for a nonprofit right now in the field of education, but yeah, more later. Go ahead, next. Now, you're on mute, Eddie.
Q and Aura, you're next.
Okay, my name's Aura from Thailand, year 17. Now I'm directing a school of public policy. It's a graduate level, so I'm interested to understand more about education as a whole and how maybe we can all link up. But anyways, today I'm quite tired, so I'll be like a fly on the wall. Yes, yeah. Nice to see you guys.
I'm Q, the boyfriend then, the husband now. She broke my heart, okay. And then I've been in education since, I'm now a student finishing off my studies.
From Singapore.
That's not important.
Oh, okay.
A big deal. Q just submitted your dissertation, right?
Just the first draft for the committee to review, yeah.
Still a big deal. We'll celebrate that. All right, Caroline, you're next.
Hi, so I'm Caroline. I'm from France, year 19. I live in South Africa, been living there for 17 years. And I've been a teacher in high school. I've been in a school management committee at my kids' school. And now for the past 3 years, we're actually unschooling. So my kids don't go to school. We don't follow a curriculum. More on that later, maybe, if you're interested.
Thank you, thank you. We'll go Angela, since I'm coming down on my screen.
There, I figured it out. I use this thing all the time at work and I'm hunting for my buttons because I've been off my rhythm the last couple of weeks. I've been teaching more or less since I last saw you guys, in classrooms, out of classrooms, one-on-one, groups of kids. And then the last, I guess, how long ago was that? Doesn't matter. But I'm fully a private teacher. I work for myself and I see students one-on-one. And COVID changed my work in a way that was pleasantly delightful, actually. This has worked so much better than I ever thought it would. It's a terrible thing to say, but the kids are used to drawing their attention to a screen. And when my head is in the light box, they pay attention. And they can enter that space, because I'm a math teacher. So I need them to enter that space in their head where the whole rest of everything falls away. And it's a lot easier in this environment to get them to that place. So I'm interested in hearing everything that you guys have to say about education. And as always, I've got a few side projects going on. So I want to probably not talk about those, but I want to hear what you guys have to say so I can think about how that all fits together. And that'll be it for me for now, I guess.
Thank you, thank you. Paola, you're next.
Hi. I'm a psychiatrist and a professor, and I've been studying mental health during COVID, before and during COVID, so I'm really interested in that. I have data on stability of mental health index, but on empathy decrease, and so I'm really interested on that and trying to go further on that.
Thank you. Meg.
Hello, I'm Meg, year 17, and I am not an educator, I am a consumer of education. I feel like, so both myself, but also I'm putting 2 small children through school, one in a specialist school, one in a mainstream. I'm particularly interested in themes about inclusion and what that looks like, not just in terms of ability, but also social mobility, all of those things. So how do you make education that works for everybody, not just for the people who are providing the service.
Excellent, thank you. I'm gonna call you Mika.
Yeah. Hi, good to see you all. And I'm Mika, year 17 from Finland. And I haven't worked as an educator as such, really ever, but I've worked on education policy for about 20, 25 years now, and mainly international cooperation in education. So EU cooperation, global cooperation, supporting both Finland, being present in developing education abroad, and then also having a lot of contacts within Finland and making Finnish education more global minded as well. So I've sort of carried on the UWC mission in a way in my own work, I guess. And today nowadays I work as a director at the Finnish National Agency for Education with special focus on international cooperation. So.
Thank you, Mika. Amanda.
Hi, so I'm year 16, it doesn't say on there, and this is my lovely son who is at Robert Bosch, and he's called Sefton, and and so I've been a teacher for a long time, so I was teaching before I had kids, and then I had 3 beautiful kids, and when I started with my kids, I started tutoring from home. So I've been tutoring mostly chemistry, but a bit of biology and maths at the last 2 years of high school level since Sefton was a baby, so for years. And then I went back into teaching about 5-6 years ago. So now I'm full-time teaching, and I still tutor pretty much 6 nights a week as well. And so I've got, and I'm very interested in education. My 3 kids are very unique. All 3 of them have quite unique skills and unique abilities. And so I've always been fascinated with education. So that's me.
Thank you, Amanda. Marcia.
Hey, Eddie, good to see you. I'm Marcia, year 17 from the Netherlands. I actually worked as a student assistant at a new IB school as a 3rd year option right after Pearson, teaching kids older than me as a assistant economics teacher, because the economic teacher had, I don't know, problems or something like that. But I remember teaching 10, I think 9 were boys and 1 girl in a Malaysian classroom about 3 months after Pearson. Haven't been a teacher since, have tried to be a teacher homeschooling kids during COVID, but I work as a manager in policy, governance, educational quality in a vocational college in the Netherlands. So inclusion and trying to get kids for whom it's not a regular thing to actually go to school and get to graduate and to learn something they need to learn in order to be independent of government and financial aid is what we try to do, because vocational colleges are really, they're everything from the assistants in the supermarket. We teach them what they need to do in order to be on time and stuff like that, but it's also kids who want to run their own restaurant. We have those courses too. I'm very impressed with the vocational college system in Finland, Mika, because that's really a guiding country for us Dutchies. So
I was going to say, this is really interesting because I've worked quite a bit on vocational education too, about 10 years at least of my career. Yeah. So really nice.
We'll connect afterwards too.
Very cool, very cool. Tara, you're on my screen next.
Hi everybody, my name is Tara. Sorry, there's a bit of feedback I can't hear at the minute. Oh, there it is. Connection's better now, thank you. I'm a teacher in Australia. I've been teaching, after I left Pearson, I became an educator in primary schools and then retrained about 5 years after that in special ed and work with hearing impaired children. Yeah, so I've been working in special ed now for over 20 years, and often reflect on all the changes that I've seen in that time in terms of inclusion and differentiation and things like that, and that it's improved. But there's always lots more room for improvement, I think. But ultimately, there's never going to be one right answer because all children come with all their own unique needs.
Thank you, Tara. Richard, you're next on my screen, but from your text, we might not be able to hear you. Let's give it a shot.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hey.
Oh, cool. I'm not an educator as such, but I've spent 20 years in the student services, working at various universities, doing from orientation to graduations, progression checks to pastoral care, and even working in like encouraging students to migrate to Australia. That's my interest in this topic at the moment. Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you, Richard. Amy, I know I owe you a phone call and a text and all of that. I'm confessing publicly.
Okay, yeah, you do, but it's okay. I'm cool with that. You've been moving. So I've been in private education for a long time, 19 years. But I kind of move in and out of public education. I live in a very, very, very rural, tiny place with only, like our whole peninsula is only like 11,000 people. So we're quite small and isolated. And so I take it upon myself to be the agitator, and the instigator and try to like make people recognize when things need to change. And so about 10 or 11 years ago, I went back for training on teaching dyslexic children to read. And one of my sisters, those of you who know me from year 17 have often heard Mitzi stories. So my sister Mitzi is a neuropsychologist and pediatric. And so she and I have worked a lot together in the years just around ADHD and what that looks like in education and whatnot. And so even though my private tutoring has spanned everything from, handwriting to calculus, my real focus has been on helping students who learn differently figure out how to be their best selves in the classroom. And so I'm actually pretty burned out right now. So Angela and I talk a lot because we share a lot of like the same struggles or whatnot, but where Angela has flourished in this time, I've really not flourished with Zoom. So I don't know what the future looks like for me in education, but I know that I still get pretty excited when I talk to the right people about it. So I think there's still hope for Amy as an educator, but I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, hopefully today's conversation will be a part of that journey. Jaylene, we won't make you sing.
Hi, nice to see you. Well, I have taught. I've been in and out of schools, mainly on term positions because I was always keeping my hands in the music industry as well. Then I have been raising my kids for the last few years when I lost my singing voice. So I've been substitute teaching where I can. And I'm sending my eldest off to kindergarten this fall. And I have to admit, I have much fear and I don't have much fear and trepidation. I guess letting her go into a system, I'm having a bit of struggle with that because there are many things that I'd love to see reformed about the system. I think we do our best here, but when it comes to public education, I think at times, I guess, okay, how could I say this? I think what I've seen lacking in school is divergent thinking, actually debate. And this is, I'm sure, going to be different across the board here with those of us who are here, but I'm speaking to our system here, and a lot of wonderful things here too. I just feel like reform and innovation, they seem to be like difficult things to achieve within a system that's already pretty embedded, So forgive me, I've had 3 hours of sleep at 6 a.m. and I'm not being very articulate, but anyway, I'm here for the conversation and to maybe get ideas and inspiration and to calm my mama's heart down that my kid's going to be okay.
I'm sure you'll be fine. All right, I'm gonna remind us to try and keep it to 30 seconds because Zia's presentation is 45 minutes long and we don't want to miss it.
Sorry.
I'm gonna butcher your name because I don't think we were in the same year. Jorge, George, Hippo Thompson. Give me a little education on your name. Okay. We can't hear you.
Sounds like Star Wars over here.
Yes, it does. All right, we'll come back to him. Kanta.
Hi, I'm trying to make sure I have the right background. I keep switching between meetings today. Hello, everybody. I haven't really been in education. I've popped in and out of it from a postgraduate support system for accountants in South Africa and looking at the transformation aspects of education and transformation in general in accounting education in South Africa. So that's been my experience, but lots of lessons learned in terms of how the system that we sausage train people through, bring them out the other end. And when they go into the real life world as adults, they can't actually adult in the world system because they've been taught to think in a certain way. And it's about unlearning and undoing that learning and getting them for their unique selves to come through. So not following the template when you're writing a report, because you can actually write the report in English and not in Accountanese, and people will understand you. So that's why I'm here to listen to all of your lovely contribution and how we're trying to do things differently and change the world one step at a time. And lovely seeing all of your faces.
Thank you, Kanta. All right, we're gonna go quickly, Benoit, then Karma, then Tanya.
Thank you. I was just telling you, Eddie, that I'm just your humble alumni engagement staff person at Pearson, and I'm observing these wonderful sessions, insightful, educational, reminiscing, etc. And just here to observe. Congratulations on this beautiful session, which perfectly matches, of course, the Making Education a Force to Unite mission of Pearson College. On with the session.
Thank you. Karma.
Hi, Eddie. Hi, everybody. Hi, I'm not an educator. I'm just another fly in the wall today. I'm a landscape architect and urban designer in Bhutan. And I'm just interested to see, just join the discussion here. Thank you.
Tanya.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I've been in front of a classroom since I've left Pearson. I was an English teacher throughout my university, and then as soon as I graduated, I started teaching in university. I'm a linguist and an anthropologist, and my research interests are on Indigenous endangered languages, and that always seems to bring us back to a school setting or a formal teaching setting. So I think a lot about, what do we do to make the learning and acquisition of Indigenous languages much better, particularly in the school settings, because the school settings are really bad at teaching languages. And then, of course, I'm in front of a classroom teaching university students all the time. So I'm here to see what I can learn from others.
Thank you. Itai.
It's very early for Itai. He
Itai is
really-
hiding as usual.
Oh yes, sorry guys. It's just my computer has 3 firewalls and hates Zoom. it's a company computer, so apologies about that. Now, for example, I can't turn on the camera because Teams, Microsoft stole it. Well, long story. Well, first I'll connect to what Amy just said. So I have ADHD, and in my background, after PC, I went to med school, then became a military surgeon, then did specialize in dermatology, then in internal medicine, then in intensive care, then moved to the US, did fellowship in melanoma, then decided to do healthcare informatics and artificial intelligence in large healthcare systems. So I worked for Google and some of these big boys. And what I do now is basically try to keep a lot of people alive. Our company has systems that support intensive care and trauma units in about 7,000 hospitals around the globe. And these folks really try very persistently to die. So so that's what we do. And my entire work, line of work, is actually remote education. And
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
So yeah, it is 4:20 in the morning, but we have a meeting with Hong Kong in an hour anyway, so why not?
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go quickly for the last 2 folks, and then I want to launch into the conversation because all these introductions have raised topics that are very relevant to the conversation that we're trying to have today. Zia and I did actually not have a full conversation, but it was very gratifying that when he sent a couple questions, it was exactly along the 2 big things that we want to talk about today, which is sort of educational equity around the world and how we can be a force in that, and then the purpose of education. So we'll go Leticia, quickly 30 seconds, and Kathy 30 seconds, and then hand over to Zia.
Good morning, everybody. Well, for me, it's good morning. Sorry that I just didn't mute myself when I got in the system. I mean, I have been in education like 4 years now. I did it before in the university, but well, I mean, I'm new in this. And the thing is, I wanted to know about other people just facing education. So I'm eager to know and hear you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Kathy?
Sorry, good morning. I'm also like Jaylene and Leticia, just waking up, getting ready actually to drop off my kids shortly, so I may have to leave early. But I heard Zia mention in a previous session that schools are getting more and more competitive. But at the same time, he mentioned something about he's intrigued about homeschooling and that he would have probably considered that. So I'm intrigued and I want to hear about it. If I miss it, I'll watch the recording later. Good luck, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. So Zia, I made you a co-host. So if you want to share your screen with those,
I'll
two
just
big
do
questions.
Yeah. Guys, brace yourself for a very, very long presentation. Let me know if you guys can see my slide. Fine. Okay, cool. So very quickly, there's 2 questions that came to my mind, and I think we kind of share that thought process, Eddie and I. So I thought I would just pose those questions very quickly in 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor. First is really something that I am deeply involved in these days, which is how do we provide equitable access to quality education for every child. The equitable part is very important, and the quality part is very important. We have a lottery of birth. where kids who are born in certain households get a very, very high quality education and others simply don't have any. I don't typically quote the World Bank for many things, but there's a term called learning poverty, which they came up with. It is very controversial, lots of discussion about it. I won't go into that right now, but very quickly, what they found was that at primary level, and that's really not the level where most of our countries are trying to get our kids, but just at primary levels, there are about 20% of kids who are out of school completely. They don't have access to a school at all. And of the 80% who do have access to school, about a quarter of them are not proficient, and that just is very easily defined by, can they read? Most of the criteria here is just basic literacy and numeracy. So as a whole, of all the kids of school-going age, and we're just talking about primary, the World Bank says 40% of them are learning poor. Either they're not in school or they are in school and not learning. And as with any problem, when you look at that problem across countries and regions with varying degrees of economic power, you can see that the problem is, it's asymmetric. It's you can see sub-Saharan Africa where learning poverty is the greatest and the deepest, and also there's a big chunk of population there. The reds denote kids who are not in school at all. And the sort of yellow gold color is for the kids who are in school but are not learning well. And you can see the same old countries and regions where many of us come from, sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East, North Africa, South Asia, and Latin America and Caribbean, and to a much lower extent, East Asian Pacific. But these are the countries explaining where learning poverty is the greatest. I put a slide there, which I will put in the chat later on for you guys to explore these numbers later as well. So the question is, we are currently dealing with a world which has very, very unequal and inequitable access to quality of education, and increasingly a world which demands a very high quality of education for access to economic opportunity and social opportunity as well. It's not just money. It's about how well you're respected in society and how much access you have to different aspects of social interaction. So this is just one area which we want to explore today. And the other area is, why do we have education today? What is the purpose of education today? Is what it says on the left side, which is you get great grades. And if you have good grades and a little bit of money or a lot of money, you get into great colleges and universities, which gives you great job opportunities. And if you have the money that those job opportunities give you, then you get a great spouse and a great zip code, which in turn gives your kids great grades and so on. And the cycle becomes this ever expanding, ever deepening cycle of privilege, which we see actually quite surprisingly uniformly across many countries, even the developing world. Or is education supposed to deliver the other part? And I'm quoting something which we at the Citizens Foundation use and lovingly refer to as the 5 C's, which is, and there are many more than 5 here, but we call them 5. So are we trying to make our kids creative and critical thinkers? Are we giving them conceptual knowledge rather than just rote learning? Are we building their confidence and communication skills? And are we, imparting some core values, some shared human values in them, whether religious, spiritual, or otherwise? And the bet is that if you've given individual all of these qualities and skills, then they will have the opportunities and experiences to make great life choices. And what I've written there is, society as a whole will benefit from having individuals who make great decisions for themselves and for society. So that's the second question we wanted to open up today. What is the purpose of education today? And to what extent are we going towards the left of the slide or the right of this slide? And has this changed? Meg asked this question on one of the Discord channels. Has this changed since we were students? And is it going in a particular direction now that we are parents and educators? So I'll pause there and back to you, Eddie.
Thank you so much, Zia. And Carol has put some really seminal questions in the chat as well that I think relates to your short presentation. For me, those two questions are kind of connected. because the purpose of education and what the definition of education is has real implications on what actions we take to provide more equity, to provide more quality. So Caro, for example, has, if I may, stepped out of the orthodox lane of education to say what the canon is saying is not exactly how you define it. And so you know when you said unschooling, it really clicked something in my head, right? That sometimes we're talking about a system that has very clear parameters and definitions. And then for us to provide a little bit more justice or equity, sometimes we have to either dismantle that system or just step out of it and then create our own, which sounds like what you've done, Caroline. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with everyone, it is a big group, but I think we'll give it a shot, is to start looking at that first question piece of the equity and the quality around the world. Whether it's equity by providing opportunities for those who learn differently, or equity by those who live in economically challenged places, or equity by the way folks learn differently. I want to open it up a little bit for to hear from folks about what your ideas are around how to continue to improve that equity around the world, or even in your own space. And since it's a big group, why don't we use the signals, the reaction. So if you put your hand up, then everybody knows how to do that, right? If you raise your hand, then I'll call on you, and then we'll flow that way, so that we're not talking over each other. I'm scanning the screen. Who wants to respond first?
So I'll go first just to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
I was filling out my bio, or whatever you call it, on the wonderful Google slides that you guys had put up. And for the first time, I said that I'm a little bit, you know, I think I used the word disenchanted with UWCs, because the cost of a 2-year experience at a UWC is now so alien and so different. It's almost like a different planet from what it costs to put one child through 11 years of schooling in one of our countries. So if I just take the system that I am a part of, it can take 75 kids through the 11 years of schooling, primary and secondary combined. That is the cost of taking one child through 2 years of wonderful Pearson education. So when I said that at home, my wife was like, you know, but that's very nice of you to say now that you've had it yourself, and I'm eternally grateful. But at some level, it is a resource allocation issue, and that inequality, which reflects on so many other things. In education, it perpetuates the next generation and the inequality that will affect the next generation. So this is one place where we really need to reduce the differences in education investment across countries if we are to see a more equal world in the next 50 years.
Amy.
So one thought that keeps recurring in my own thought process and the things that I write about is not just the allocation of resources. It comes down to allocation of resources, but who gets those resources? And in the US, and probably everywhere, but this is where I see it, it's really about worthiness. Who's worthy of our resources? And who judges that? Who gets to decide who's worthy, right? And so when we talk about equality in the US, we have that really horrible image of the bootstraps, like you can pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and it's just such a ridiculous thing that perpetuates more inequality. But it also lends itself to this idea of, well, then if you can persevere, if you are resilient, then you are worthy, and then that gives you more access to the resources and to the extras, because especially in the US, I don't know but there's this kind of weird sense of we will only invest in the people who deserve it. And that, until we can break down that part here where we are, well, then we can't really even get to an equitable resource allocation, because then it's like, well, they'll just waste the money, or it'll just be a waste of money. It's like, who's deciding that worthiness, and how do we break that thought process down? And I think it's also a hidden thought process. I don't think that we're cognizant of the fact that we're doing it on such a huge scale, which obviously we are. And I feel like that's where, at least in this country, where we have to start. We have to break that thought of worthiness before we can reallocate resources.
Thank you, Amy. I'm really interested in what your thoughts, Caroline, on this, because I wonder if is the solution for us to try and right the inequities in the Orthodox system, right? Resource allocation, let's help everybody figure out who gets what's fair to them. Or is it unschooling and changing or redefining the idea of education into the right side of Zia's last slide? Like, we focus more on that, then you can step out of the Orthodox system and create your own kind of way of educating folks.
Eddie, I think Aura and Q have their hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Carla, I'll come to you after Aura and Q go.
Oh, okay, thanks. This is from me, not Q, but you can be here. Oh, okay. No, so I was wondering, this is more of a kind of a reflection, right? If we see mass education, and this is something we've been talking about, Kama and I, for a while, but if we see mass education as being the responsibility of governments, right, of states, then we always kind of fall into the trap that education as an economic instrument, right, to have it, to provide it so that the people can be more competitive, more talented, bring in more money, or work for better, larger, higher paying companies. So even in the language that we're using right now, like just now, it's like resources, investments, returns, right? So I'm just wondering, is there a way to get out of that paradigm? And also, it's like, is there a way to look at education that's not economic instruments, right? And how can we do that if it's still under the umbrella of governments and states that still competes with national interests per se? So I'm just throwing that in, and if anyone has ideas of the language that we can use that's beyond investments and markets and skills needed and so on.
Yeah, and if I may just quickly add on to what Aura just shared, for me, fundamentally, my perspective is that it's the why, right? Why are we educating? And once we have that, then the inequitable opportunities, will kind of like not resolve itself, but we can then address them in a more positive manner. And just a quick one too is that I just have faith that things can become better. I have hope. Yeah, that's it.
Eddie, can I speak? Is it okay if I speak now?
Yes, go ahead.
Cuman really said what I wanted to say, is that we need to ask why education. We speak a lot about education, but we very seldom define what we mean by education. Like it's a word that's so used that everyone just uses it, and we all think that we're talking about the same thing, but really are we? What I mean is like how do we define education? Is it reading, counting? Is it having vocational skills to be able to hold a job? Is it having critical thinking? Is it about the value we share? it really is that why. And that's what led me to unschooling is the frustration of, as a teacher, being taught a curriculum that I didn't always agree with. And that I thought, okay, someone up there decided this is the curriculum. This is what kids need to learn now at that age. And I was always wondering why. Why do they need to learn this now? Why is this important? When I arrived at Pearson, I didn't know there was any other schooling system than the French system, you know. And then I arrived and I discovered the IB and people coming from different backgrounds, having learned different things in different systems. That's when I became interested in education. And then my kids here in South Africa have been going through the French system because that's where I was teaching. That's the people I knew, it's the community I knew, and I liked the teachers and I liked the values, and I thought, okay, they can be there. But it was very expensive. And then I went into the management of the school committee to see why is the school so expensive. And then I realized nobody was asking the questions of why are we doing this? Why are we doing things in a certain way? How can we decide, how can we talk about the house? That's what I'm saying, if we don't know the whys. So my husband and I decided that we were going to use our resources, our time that we were investing in the school a lot, and our money, and just bring the kids home, you know, and use the resources for our kids. And then I thought, okay, so what am I going to teach them? You know, I'm a teacher. I love teaching. I love teaching. I love being in front of the classroom. I love transferring, you know, giving things. And then I realized, but what should I teach them? What do they need to know? What do they need to learn? Why? And this whole questioning for 2 or 3 years led me to discover unschooling. And really, to me, it just made so much sense. You know, human beings learn. They learn because they have to. You know, they learn to fit in their environments. My youngest never went to school and learned to read playing video games. You know, because if you want to chat with mates and if you want to understand, you have to learn. And never once did I sit with him and to tell him what it was. You know, I read for him when he wanted to, but somehow he managed to learn because we are surrounded by reading in my culture. But maybe in another culture, in another environment, what's important is to learn something else. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on. I don't know if you've got specific questions you can tell me. I don't know if it's I don't think unschooling is a solution, if that's the question you're asking. But definitely asking the why is important. Considering the environment is very important. I mean, where I am in South Africa, I just always think, well, you know, if the cities were built differently, if humans, adults, because not only kids need to learn, we're always learning. If our environment was made more, I don't know, to me, it's not the school that's important now. It's the communities, it's the environments, it's how we relate to our environments. Okay, it's not very clear. I'm sorry. But anyways, it's a start for the conversation.
I think you're fine, Caroline. No, I was interested in your idea because it comes back to, again, Zia's last slide about the purpose of education. And I think, at least I'll speak for Zia, I think for the populations that we work with, right, the purpose of education has sort of been defined for them as an economic imperative, a social imperative, in order for you to get those degrees and diplomas, because that's how you will survive. And so if folks have sort of an economic luxury to be able to philosophically think about education differently, I think that's useful. But there's also, I think, and Zia will correct me if I'm wrong, at least the populations that we work with, there's a little bit of a reality in terms of the way it's been defined for them, that in order to be able to go through the economic ladder, you need to check these boxes that we have set up for you. I'm also enjoying the rich conversation that's going on in the chat, so please keep that going.
So Mika and Angela have their hands up as well. Sorry, Caroline.
So maybe I'll come back.
Please,
Yes.
Caroline,
This is great co-hosting. Mika will go, Angela, and I will come back to you, Caroline.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, I have to go quite soon, so it's really interesting discussion, I have to say, and touches really on so many of the issues that come up in the sort of international comparative education debate all the time in my work too, and in my life. And I would just like to come back to Zia's slide on the, you know, on one side is the system, right? On the other side, individual. And often the education debate is seen like this, that, you know, it's education is for the individual, and individuals are asking and ordering things from education, getting personal benefits and economic benefits, social benefits, and so forth. And then on the other hand, there's a system that's meant to answer to that. And you know, the system is often blamed for not answering to the individual needs, and then the individuals are kind of asking the system for far too much in a way, and sometimes it's economic and sometimes it's social, and everybody forgets, you know, about what is sort of providing all of this, i.e. the society. And Ora and Q, they really well brought this topic up, that, you know, all of this is within a society, right, as well. And I don't think we can come to a situation where nobody, you know, is expecting anything from education. I mean, the education, it always serves a purpose. It has an economic purpose, a social purpose. I mean, you know, we have the systems in place for a certain reason, right? But I would just like to focus on the sort of societal value of education, and it's kind of the middle ground, and in fact brings also focus maybe on the fact that the system and the individual are not opposites. You don't need to escape this system individual, you know, system into some sort of other realm of education, homeschooling or something like that. You can make this better by working on a societal level, by bringing the system and the individual more into debate with each other. And if you look at some of the functioning, you know, well-functioning education systems of the world, they are doing this. Some of them do it very rigidly and almost, you know, almost out of, you know, in a dictatorship type of way, and others do it by bringing a lot of freedom to the teachers, and a lot of freedom to the parents, and a lot of freedom to the students, and the kind of student-centered focus and so forth. So I mean, there's a lot of good debate in the international education world around this, and how to bring more curiosity and creativity into the system. So I mean, it's not a lost situation that we need to escape. And in fact, they're just two sides of the very same thing, if you focus more on the societal value of education rather than on this dichotomy or this opposition between the two. So you know, I'm for the sort of optimistic view on developing education. I guess that's basically what I want to say. I'm sorry I have to leave quite soon,
That's all right.
but it's really interesting debate. Thanks.
Thank you. We need your optimism. Welcome, Aida, and Angela's got her hand up, so she'll go next.
Hello again. Zia, on your slide, there was a point about teaching confidence and communication. And Caroline, you brought this up too, that your son learned students, we're all always learning. We're all always learning. What are we learning? And these environments that we create for kids to spend their days in, and as a private tutor, right? And parents don't phone me when everything's going great, right? Parents phone me when there's tears at the kitchen table. So I see kids that struggle at school. And a lot of kids spend a lot of time in their primary years learning that school is not for them. Right? We bundle them up and get their clothes on and stick their sandwich in their backpack and send them off to a day of learning that this environment is not for you. And your role is to behave and sit in your chair and not make a fuss while the rest of us get on with what we need to do today. So a lot of my work has been tackling that. How do we surround kids with stuff that they need, stuff that they will learn from, just that fruitful environment. Carolyn, your boy learned to read because you immersed him in a loving and literate environment. So how do we surround kids with, I mean, and I'm focusing on that all of the time. I create resources for teachers and right, when you stick that worksheet in front, because I've worked in lots of classrooms and we're using all this technology to meet with each other now. But the reality is that the only resource a teacher can count on, and I'm not working in international environments, I'm not working in difficult environments, I am working in Canada has, to my knowledge, one of the best public school systems around. And even though there are iPad carts and routers and rooms full of laptops, the only resource that a teacher can absolutely count on when she's trying to get 30 kids to see themselves with confidence and embark them into the world is her photocopier. So the resources for the students are still this, right? Most students get handed bits of paper to show that they've learned what they've learned, or to work through a problem set, or all of my examples come from math because that's what I do. So I'm always reaching for, how do we design that page, right? It becomes a graphic design problem now, right? How do we design that page so that the student arises from that having learned confidence, right? When that page gets put in front of you, you don't cave into a hole inside yourself, because this is the part of the day where I show the teacher that I don't know what I'm doing. Right? Yet another timed test that I can't make it through. I have failed before I even begin. So my work is a lot about that confidence piece from Zia's slide. About, it doesn't matter what we talk about, it doesn't matter what we teach them. It's embarking adults into the world who think of themselves as thinking people. Everything that I have need to make a decision happens inside my head. And teaching kids, and well, humans, but we see them when they're little, to trust that part of themselves. And that's the piece that I work on.
Yeah, Q,
then
go ahead.
Zia.
There are many different systems. So I'm just going to focus on one aspect of formal education that I've been involved with, which is UWC-SEA. And continuing from the thread that Angela has shared, over the 12, 13 years I was at UWC-SEA, I've had too many students in the second year of IB, before the examinations, in my physics lab, crying on my shoulders because they wanted to do drama, psychology, literature, physics, but their families expect them to do business, to become an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer. So I guess I'm kind of like flipping it on the other side. When we have a school, UWC-SEA, which exists within this global understanding of education, formal education, primarily in its economic role, and a school which does what it can, all the UWCs, right, does what it can, we can to provide strong, effective education, and then bang, they come out with a brick wall of a family of parents. I cannot count the number of times I've had to sit down with parents in very difficult conversations as a UWC graduate, as a UWC educator, someone who champions effective education and allowing humans to choose a path based on their passions. And the parents just say, dude, we don't want him or her to be a musician because how can you live? How can you make money? Yeah. And then on the other end, I go to a school in a refugee camp.
And even that, you would apply for.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you mentioned that, Hugh, because I also work for a system which has kids who go out of school and the rest of the days they have to work to earn and be part of the income generation for the family. And we struggle with the fact that we know that they need to be going through a certain environment and a certain experience, which will make them certain kind of individuals but we are competing within a very tight school day for also to give them the content, which will get them to tick those boxes and get those grades and get the pieces of paper which society still demands for anyone to be let into the interview. Now, the interview for any job or any college is where you see the creativity and you see the confidence. And most of us who are employers and selecting people for jobs and for positions, even university scholarship positions, we love the interviews because that's where you see the person. But who gets to make the short list for the people who get to meet you? All of that, whether it's the grades for the kids, like in the Pakistani university scholarship process, you have to get a certain number of certain grades to make the cut to be in the interview shortlist. Similarly, for any job, for most of the world, and especially for regions which have most of the population of the world, you still need the degrees to make it to the stage where a human being will meet you and decide whether they want to give you as a person that role. So for kids who have yet to, whose families have yet to break out of poverty, even if we were as a conscious schooling system to provide them with 21st century skills, we cannot do that at the expense of what society is still demanding of them, which is pieces of paper and degrees.
Thanks, Zia. I think Itai's hand went up before Amy, even though I like Amy better. So we'll go Itai first.
Yeah, Itai, you have your hand up.
Yeah, and it took me a very long time to discover how to raise my hand. So instead of that, I was chatting. Yeah, I think you guys are absolutely right. And I spent a year now in Israel during COVID. I was supposed to be there for 2 weeks visit, and then the whole shebang started, and they closed the airport basically for about 6 months. So I worked remotely in Israel, and I saw my nieces and nephews having to, which come from kind of middle class, but very good education system, very good access to technology, but they couldn't go to school for about a year, and they had all the support you can get, I guess, in the developed world, private tutoring, Zoom classes around the clock. But I think that for them, it was a lost year. My niece, the oldest one, is 16, the younger is 12. They didn't interact with people. They didn't get to just, go through that bonding part that you have to do, especially as an adolescent. I think it's much more important than, in my eyes, it's much more important than further math or how good you are with art. I think that it's learning how to live with this very cruel and vicious and savage humanity, which is called teenagers, and survive that I think the whole world kind of missed this year. Being with your mom and seeing the teacher on the screen, if you're, let's say, we're fortunate enough to have that, is nothing like being part of the popular girls or the non-popular girls, and what happens with your first crush in high school, or the first time that you fail an exam, or you don't make it to the varsity team, or you have friends who have much more money than you have, and you don't want to bring them home to show them your house because you guys don't have a private plane and they do. So it could relate to every piece of challenge that we go through these ages. And for us, it was extreme because we were isolated in this cuckoo's nest in the middle of the forest. But even for them, for just regular kids, not having that environment of interaction with their peers, I think was a lost year globally. And that's for me is the most important part of education, not a Harvard degree.
Thank you so much, Itai. Amy.
I wanted to go back to what Zia was saying about what society demands, and I want to talk about how even that is a reflection of the inequities of our lived realities. Because where we are right now, where I am in Maine, in this very rural part, we can choose to get off the merry-go-round. My son, who, okay, this is totally a brag, and don't judge me, but I'm so super happy. He just got a 5 on his AP Calc as an 11th grader. And the reason I'm bragging is because he really didn't really do what he should have done on that. But here's the not brag. Are you ready? He doesn't want to apply to university. And there's this piece of me that is, what? No, like university was my ticket out of poverty. Like, I'm not this poor kid in Mississippi anymore. You have to go to university. And then he makes me stop and he says, Mama, I'm not a poor kid in Mississippi. And that, I think, is, Zia, what I was reflecting on when you were talking, because the lived reality is I had to go to university, right? I had to, if I wanted out of that poverty. But now I've created this world. And, you know, in US terms, we are not affluent. In global terms, I would say we're definitely affluent. And just that reality means he doesn't have to go to university. He can stay right here and be a farmer or a fisherman. He can, you know, be a tradesman if he wants to be, because it's possible. He doesn't need to move on. He doesn't have to use that academic brain that he has, but because he can use the other part of this brain that he has. But I hear you, Zia, in the sense that where you're standing right now with your students, that university is necessary because it was necessary for me. And so I think even that is just another reflection of our inequitable realities. And I apologize for the brag, but it was part of the point.
Don't apologize for bragging. He deserves it.
It deserves it, by the way. And I got to interject here, but I'm thinking that your kid, the only difference between what you did and he's doing is that he doesn't need to do it yet. You have to run away quickly. But he's not going to be living on his mom's basement at 35. That is not how his mom taught him. So he's just going to take his time because he has the luxury to take his time. But do you really think it's going to be just, you know, running a combine or a farmer?
Well, I think that's the thing, is I think he could, and I think he wouldn't be living in my basement. I think that he has the luxury that in our reality, he could still have a house and a life, and it could still be, I mean, he won't earn $1 million, but he doesn't want to earn $1 million. He wants to live right here in on this little peninsula and have this life, and that's possible without being poor and without needing to run away, because it doesn't mean poverty for him. And he won't be living in my basement.
That's a luxury that we have in the developed world, but we also have that pull to be a Kardashian, to be a Elon Musk, and to be those people, and that reaches every corner of the globe. So I don't know if you'll be happy living on $50K a year, even if you can live fine, but I'm not sure he'll be able to do what he wants to do in a couple of years from now.
Well, maybe, Itai, maybe, but I think that that's also part of, I'm sorry to keep interjecting everyone. I just want to make this point that I think that where we live right now, which is what I was trying to respond to in the chat for you, is the value set right where we are is such that his friends and our friends are living on that 50,000 a year, and they are having lives that feel very good because we see the affluence. It's here, it comes in every summer, and there's a disdain for it because we're watching these people throw away resources. And I think that value set is different. I don't think he wants to be Elon Musk. But again, you're right. He could
But he might want
change.
the new Ford F-150 in 5 years from now, and that costs 84K. So that's 2 years of work. So I'm just saying that America pushes us to that it's not enough 50K.
Yeah, I don't think the 2 points are in opposition.
No, I think that we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
You just create, there's different expectations from that generation.
Right. All right. I see a bunch of hands on my screen. I think Q and Aura went, and then Kanta will go, and then Tara, and then Tanya.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Amy, because it kind of like made me think about how when I was teaching in a public school system of Singapore, like it was a neighborhood school, the kind of school that I grew up in. I was known as the sergeant. I was a bastard, right? But I got 100% passes because my kids were either inspired by me or they were scared shitless of me. And I got them to pass their physics, their math, and they were able to go on to the next stage of their formal education, which then allowed them to climb out of the poverty cycle, the way I did, the way you did, right? And then I burnt out because, like Caroline, I was teaching in a system that didn't resonate with my philosophy. And I'm fortunate that there is a UWC in Singapore, and I was able to flourish as an educator there. And it had its other challenges, as I shared with all of you earlier. What I'm starting to really think, and thank you so much for this conversation, Eddie, Zia, for getting us to think about this, is maybe it's about the hyper, to use Aura's term here, hyper individualization, in the sense that we do not impose on all of our learners. Of course, there's a big ask, but the idea being that every single one of us, whatever you choose to do, whatever you want to be, it's all good. You can live on 50K a year, 10K a year, 100K. I don't know. I really don't know, right? So, but thank you. I'm really starting to think about that.
Yeah, no, the term is hyper customization of the learner's journey, if you would say, for education.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to South Africa.
Hello, everybody. My son was in the room next door to me, and I wanted him to join this conversation because it's about the conversation we've been having, because he started off wanting to be an astrophysicist. Well, he started off wanting to be a basketball player, but he's not tall enough. And then an astrophysicist, and then UWC happened, and art took over. And we have a tough time trying to have a conversation with people in South Africa about the fact that he's going to become an artist, and why? And your mom's an accountant, but why? So I thought he would join this conversation and just give us some perspective on what he's gone through in that journey very quickly. This is Rishavan, by the way.
Hi, everyone. I know I've met some of you and not others, but it's good to meet those of you who have not. I guess I'm part of your reunion quite often, so thank you for letting me. I guess at the school that I was at in South Africa before I went to UWC, I didn't actually have art as a subject, and we it was a Turkish-run school, so we focused essentially entirely on math and sciences. And then I got to Costa Rica, which is the UWC that I went to, and I took art, and I ended up really enjoying it. And I think after that, I was like, okay, I think I want to do architecture, because I'd done some engineering and graphic design. And then I got to the college that I'm going to, and I guess actually to the last point about, I guess, the hyper individuality of anybody's education, I go to Bennington College in Vermont in the States, for those of you who don't know, and the whole model was founded in like the 1930s around the progressive education movement that was happening in the States at the time. And the idea was that a student studies will yield better results if they are able to guide their own education, essentially. So like self-directed learning. And I didn't actually realize this at the time or when I was applying to go there. But after I got there, I realized that I actually really enjoyed it and it kind of fit really well into the UWC values as well. And I think through that and through the freedom to kind of figure out what I want to do, I still don't know what I want to do, which is something that I've also realized is that you go through college, you can graduate with the degree and you still don't necessarily know what you want to do. And the expectation to know what you want to do at 18 or even 24 is kind of ridiculous, considering it's a fairly big decision to be making. But I'm really grateful for that freedom that I guess my parents, that UWC and Bennington gave me. And it's allowed me to kind of explore different routes for myself and just try out different jobs. And Bennington actually also has a required component of the education, which is an internship every year. So I have to do a 6-week internship for every year that I'm at the college. And that's kind of given me the chance to go into different fields and try different things out and actually get a working understanding of what it's like to be in that job, as opposed to just reading it in a textbook and imagining and hoping that one day when I get there, it'll be something that I enjoy. I still don't know what I want to do. I'm studying the arts. I'm graduating in a year, so I think I'm most likely going to end up working in a museum or a gallery and trying to sell my pictures and my paintings. So if anybody's interested, yeah. But I think that the self-directed learning really is the way forward in terms of education and in terms of allowing people to move into things that they're passionate about. I also think that requires the society in which we live in to move away from a productivity-based society in which you are only valuable to society if you can contribute in economic terms. But that's a much bigger discussion as well. Yeah, I guess that's part of it. Thank you for letting me speak, by the way.
He said my piece. I've got so much more to say, but I'm not going to take up more time. But this is the type of conversation we need to continue, because it's about changing mindsets. Because Zia will hear what I'm saying here. From an Indian family background, this is the wrong thing to do, because you're supposed to have the degree, the master's, the honors, the PhD, and the paycheck at the end. You're not supposed to do heart and passion stuff. And yes, we need the money, but at the end of the day, if you're joyful, if you're a happy person in heart and you're joyful, you contribute better to the world. That's my piece.
Actually, if I could, sorry to keep taking one, if I could add to that, I do think that comes out of a certain, there was a necessity for that, a generation or a few generations before me. And due to people, a couple generations before me, and even my parents having to do things like that, I now have the privilege to do that due to the upward mobility that has given my family. And that, it happens at different rates in different places of the world and that sort of thing. But I guess, obviously this is a much larger discussion, and the context within this, with the context which this sits within is the economic background that your family comes from and the country that you come from and the history of that. And now we start talking about colonialism, and I don't know if you can tell, but I went to UWC as well. So
and we'll go on forever. Let's give someone else a chance. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Rajavan. You're not alone. There are many people, some on this screen, who are still trying to figure out what to do with their lives. So that journey is a lifelong journey. And two, the last point that you made, the fact that Akanta as an accountant is probably one of the reasons you're able to be an artist, right? So we have to hold those two realities in our minds. Thank you so much. I appreciate your comments. We'll go Tara, Amanda, Tanya, and then Zia.
I was just thinking about Zia's two big questions about the purpose of education and equity. And I was thinking, when I've been coming to these discussions, it's either very early in the morning or very late at night, and I want to say something really profound, but I'm so tired that it probably doesn't come across as coherent as I'd like. But I do little drawings, I do little doodles when I'm listening in, and I've drawn a big arrow between the two because I think they're so heavily aligned. And equity is about access. And I think of the purpose of education to be about the tools that we get from being educated. And I think of the main tools that we get from education are both social and cognitive. So when I start thinking about equity, I was thinking that even in a country like Australia, where we have free public education, the children that can access that, it's still not equitable because of what they bring when they come. So we have lots of discussions in Australia about the 0 to 5-year-olds and that time in their lives and how key it is, and the divides that we're seeing that come about because of the time that people spend with their children in those 0 to 5, in terms of even well-educated people who are spending more time on devices or long hours working, and that lack of social interaction, and the fact that I don't see parents reading to their children before they come to school, and all those things that are happening in that 0 to 5, that it's very different to the more sort of mainstream education that people had when I was a child. And so now as an educator, I'm starting to see those long-term impacts, as well as generational trauma that comes from one generation to the next, where the child themselves may not have experienced the trauma, but because their parents and their grandparents did, they too have come with mental health issues and all those sort of things. And so I wanted to say something, maybe more profound, but because of everything that's been happening in Afghanistan, and I've got 3 teenage children, just hearing my children comment, because I heard on the news that the girls aren't getting educated, and them just simply saying, hang on, that's not fair. And I'm watching them now starting to have that global perspective and trying to help them have that global perspective. And they know that they don't have the solution, but I'm just grateful that they're aware, and I'm looking forward to making them more aware. And Amanda, when you said, Amy, when you said earlier about wanting to link back to remembering what it is to teach, because I'm a passionate teacher, so I always know it can be tricky when we have those conflicts, when we are trying to remember why we got into teaching in the first place. And I was going to say that I find it's helpful if you just remember that initial joy, why you became a teacher for the very first time. And some of you probably wouldn't know that mine actually stemmed from Pearson College. So there was a day when we had lots of visitors come to the school, and there was a lady with a little girl, and they were signing, and I didn't know what sign language was, and because I was only 16 and had a very sheltered childhood. And she left the little girl with me just for a minute while she ducked off to the toilet, and the girl went quite hysterical and started signing at me at crazy, and I didn't understand a word that she meant. And then the lady came back, and that tiny little 5-minute exchange is why I then became a teacher, and then later remembered that I want to become a hearing teacher and wanted to learn sign language. So if ever I'm having a moment when I forget why I want to teach, I just remember that joy and that initial moment, and it just reminds me and sparks it again.
Go ahead, Amanda.
Hi, I've been jumping between the chat and listening to everybody, but my preferred function is to listen to everybody. But so there's some of the stuff I wanted to talk about refers to a lot of the chat that has been happening, and quite a lot of it was to do with the support from UWC. When we were there's quite a lot of conversation that I was reading, and Ben, while you were saying about how UWC's your feeling is being more accepting of and supportive of students, and I thought Sefton might. Do you want to say something?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I thought Sefton might like to say something of his experience at Robert Bosch College. So he's just finished his first year.
I can speak.
You go.
So my kind of feeling towards the school support systems are I know from my experience at Robert Bosch, at least, there is support towards students who look for it, but the thing is, the teachers, the only the learning support teachers, the ones that care. The rest of the teachers don't understand what it means, because I've got very severe dyslexia and dysgraphia, so I can't read and write basically. But my teachers, they don't understand what that actually means. So I tell them I have dyslexia, and I've started trying to learn German for the first time, and this is my third time trying to learn language. I've tried to learn French for 5 years. I've tried to learn Maori for a year. I've tried to learn, now I've tried to learn German for a year. And every single time it's always the same thing I always get is I can speak it well because I can understand, how to speak it or whatever. But then I tell my teacher, look, I'm dyslexic. That means I can't read. And I didn't realize that dysgraphia, but that I can't write now as well. So I can't spell and I can't write. So then I told my German teacher this, and she was like, oh yes, okay, whatever. But then it was just a general disregard for what that actually means. So in the end of your exam, she basically read out my exam in front of the entire class and said that this is horrible and you should not do anything like this. And she was very disappointed with my overall ability to express myself in German. And this happened with pretty much all of my teachers, something similar to this. So I don't know, I felt that, and then the teachers, they were saying because of COVID, they couldn't see us as much. But I've come from a public schooling system where there's a class size of 30 and you get like a 45-minute class and then it's on to the next one or whatever. So there's very little student-teacher interaction. And I felt that it was just teachers being lazy and inconsiderate towards this. Having a class size of 7 students or 10 students, it's not, in my opinion, I don't know, I'm not a teacher, but I think it's easier than teaching 150 students and building a connection with all 150 than teaching maybe 30 or 40 students and building a connection with 30 or 40 students in an hour and a half block. I don't know, I felt that in the schooling system at the moment, there is a general lack of care towards the students. And this is not something that can be easily changed, but it's something that I've always noticed is teachers who do put in the effort are amazing and they make changes in students' lives that can never be matched. But often I think it is teachers who have been burnt out from years and years and years of teaching who end up, teaching a class and they don't want to be there. The class doesn't want to be there. The energy just keeps getting reciprocated and it just ends up in a negative cycle. And then I don't know. Yeah. My thoughts.
That was beautiful.
That really was. You've given us a real insight into the realities on the ground, right? We can talk in sort of grandiose philosophical terms, but there's some realities that students face every day. Thank you for that. All right, we'll go Tanya and then Zia.
I'd like to first sort of reply to Kristen, because as the mother of somebody who has dyslexia as well, I'm appalled that UWCs are not set up to be able to deal with something as common as dyslexia. And with my 13-year-old, she has dreams of going to UWC, and I sort of internally cringe and kind of go, are you going to get all of the supports that you need? Are you going to be ready? Like, is this the place for you? Unfortunately, I think UWCs, are not set up for a lot of diversity in a lot of things, especially neurodiversity and disability, right? So, what if a blind student is coming? What if a student in a wheelchair is coming? What if a student, like all of these are just not, right, not set up. And mental health issues, right? So my oldest as well, she has depression and ADHD. And, Pearson would not have been a good place for her because there wouldn't have been the support that she needed to thrive. So that's kind of that's sad to a certain extent, right? That we're sort of not allowing a whole set of populations that could benefit from this type of education to be there because the supports are not there. And I think this has to do with what Caroline was saying in the chat, and I really want to bring it up, and what Kansa was also saying, is that there really needs to be a paradigm shift. And I'm sorry if you've heard me say that in the climate change, but I think it's all part of it, right? It's part of changing our economics, it's part of changing our education, it's part of, like, there has to be a better way of living that is more equitable, that is more that values people equally, that is not hierarchical, that is, that doesn't assign value to people just based on their economic contributions, that supports everybody. Like, I'm a huge fan of the basic income, of a universal basic income. And I think, but it can't just be like peanuts to survive. It really has to be sort of enough for people to be able to contribute to society in whatever way they do. One of my daughters is really interested, the youngest one is really interested in like hair and makeup, and she says, Mom, I want to have a hair salon, and when some of my family hears that, they sort of cringe because they have these ideas about, why a hairstylist and, what does that mean? And how does that situate you socially? And, shouldn't she aspire to more and like go to university? And, how can like the daughter of a professor be thinking of becoming, a hairstylist? And it's like, oh my God, there's all these stigmas and stereotypes in their heads. Like, if she's happy, if she can make a living, if she can make other people happy, like, what's the problem with that? Like, better for her to just be happy, like, as long as, and that, right, making a living, cutting people's hair and making them happy and whatever, than to be miserable in a 9-to-5 job in an office, just for status. But I think that needs to start within society, right? To value the plumber as much as the professor or the president, because all of those people are needed and are needed equally to function. And we can't function without them, right? I mean, we can probably function better without a professor than without a plumber. And yet, and that's so hard. And I do agree with Amy that there are pockets, right? I was also going to say that there are pockets in the world where these different ways of thinking are happening. And Blue Hill is a beautiful example. But also people are making their changes, right? There are circular economies that are working. I belong to a Buy Nothing group where, gifts of time and talent and barter of products and knowledge is really giving and circulated among the neighborhood. And those are the kinds of things that give me hope that these things are possible. But we need these changes faster, and we need these changes at a global scale.
Thank you, Tanya.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody. I've got
Thanks,
to go.
Tanya.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Bye,
Thank you for joining.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Zia.
Yeah, at least what I have to say very quickly is related to what Tanya was also saying. But look, I think many of us live in countries where it is not going to be possible to just divorce economic concerns from the path and direction of education. So it is important to try and marry at an individual level the concern about whether this person will be able to live and economically be self-reliant, especially for girls. I cannot emphasize this enough, how much, especially in Eastern societies, girls suffer socially and individually because of not being economically independent. So that is really an important part that education still is expected to deliver. But I don't think that is an impossible task to marry that with flourishing as an individual. And especially in today's society where so many different fields have opened up and enterprise itself has opened up, the idea of economic self-reliance is changed from our time. When I said that I was going to do an MBA, Miklos laughed at me and almost beat me up because he knew how different that was from my mindset, but I knew what my reality was. The second piece, which I don't get, look, for the folks who can't make a choice and for where the two have to be married, it's absolutely essential. But people who have the economic resources, who just make these choices for their children because of status concerns, because of the fact that we as successful parents need our kids to deliver good grades so that we can post them on Facebook, and for them to go to that college rather than any college because that is what I need to be able to say to my friends. That piece really has to be called out and deconstructed, because that is where the leading edge of pain for young people still exists for many of us. I see this in the school that my kids go to. They don't have anything they need, but they're exacting such a price from their kids. Kids who study 14 hours a day so that they can deliver straight A stars so that their parents can be proud of them. That is where, my mind just boggles.
Brilliant point, Zia. Brilliant point. Hippo. Jack, you have to teach me how to pronounce your name. Hippo?
Hippo is fine. Can you hear me now?
Yes, very
okay,
clearly.
So switching to the headset actually worked. I actually wanted to say, I went through academic education, but I'm not working as an academic most of the time. So I'm actually an architect by training, but I do make my money with bicycles. It makes me extremely happy. And actually, I had that passion even before I went to Pearson College. I was trained as a bicycle mechanic at the age of 14. The other thing I used to make money with, and sometimes still do, is actually art. So my first real independent job was being a freelance artist. And that was just after Pearson College, having gone through the art program at a UWC. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we are currently doing here in Germany. We're selecting too few people with a more diverse background to send them to the UWCs. I've had that discussion for more than 25 years with the selection committee now. And that's actually one of the reasons why I broke off contact with the German selection committees last year, because I just couldn't stand it anymore. We're creating more and more lawyers. And especially with the advent of the Robert Bosch College, we should have had far more diverse group of German students come about, but we didn't. There are still a few of them that are extremely good artists, especially extremely good musicians, but it's bizarre. It is very bizarre. And I think the focus of the IB program on the academics is something rather counterproductive for individual development, right? So yeah, that's my 5 cents of wisdom here. So I still think academics is good, even if your mind is structured to be an artist, because it will allow you to explore more than one path. And you might be able to integrate the different things to learn a little better if you get a university education. Is it necessary? No. Will it be necessary in the future? I think actually people who learn hands-on professions will be very, very sought after in the not so far away future, because a lot less people will be proficient in hands-on jobs. Yeah. So become a car mechanic, become an airplane mechanic, will work.
Excellent, excellent point, Hippo. Itai, I think you had your hand up, so I'll go you, and then Jose, and then Marcia.
Great. I'll keep it short. I think that
you can't.
I know, I'll try, but yeah, actually, my whole team tells me that on all video calls. But I think the purpose of the college was a singular purpose, and we've all heard that sentence from Mr. Pearson himself. How can there be peace without people knowing each other? That was the purpose of college that I remember. I heard that sentence so many times. And the national committees in many places, at least in my country, tried to choose the most capable diplomats. It was seen as the place that you would go and meet the rest of the world, and you've got to be the face of your country. You got to be the one that will be able to stand for yourself, for your country, for the issues, especially if you come from countries that have some issues. And I think that really prevented bringing people with more challenges and disabilities, and that's a huge miss. I really hope that the UWC would take what you talked about before into account and realize that we have to bring the people with challenges to also represent their countries. But eventually it goes to the national committees, and many of them don't see it that way.
Thank you. Sobering reality. Marcia, and then Jose, and then Tanya.
I was about the academic value. I think there's been, for starters, I had an easy time because all I needed to do was pass my IB in order to get into a Dutch university. So I've never been impressed with having to do more. I did because I wanted to myself, but not because I had to. Well, there were so many of you, and there still are so many students at current UWCs who would like to go to a good university, and they need to get good grades in order to get a scholarship and to further education in the way they would like to, or in the way their parents would want them to. Because you've seen, I've noticed that there's been quite a few of you who actually started in engineering, science, all these hard things that you should do in order to prove that you're a good student. And they've ended up in more social areas. So you've all started doing the thing that you thought was the right thing to do. And then in the end turned out to be a people person after all. I was fortunate enough to choose what I wanted to do. And so I've been a people person ever since the beginning. And I really think that the main thing that UWC should be about is bringing young people together, getting to know each other, getting to share experiences, and getting a somewhat broader understanding of what this world is about. And that was my most important contribution. And that's hard if you come from a small town, lower income family who've never, who don't speak anything but Dutch, who watch TV but don't read books and don't have a newspaper and stuff like that. So it's how could we, open that world for others who would not be so privileged as my kids to be born into a bigger world just because their cot was where it was and their parents were who they are. And that's the real struggle if it comes to education. So how would, what would we do to make those two things, who your parents are and where your cot was, where you were born, less important in the opportunities you get in the rest of your life?
Thank you, Marcia. Jose.
Hello, everybody. I believe there are a couple of people that don't know me. So I am Jose from Ecuador, currently living in Brazil, working with refugees. But I have been reading the messages, and thank you, Eddie, for the session. I am not, I have taught many years ago, but I am not teaching anymore. But I have so many mixed feelings. Looking at the messages and looking at my life before Pearson College, my father, as Marcia mentioned, he studied engineering because at that time, if you did social science, you will be either stupid or poor. And he was unlucky enough to have me when he was 18 years old. So he went to engineering, and he studied while he was raising me and my younger brother. And as soon as he finished that, he went into social science. And then I was lucky enough to have a decent education. And then I came to Pearson College. And I know that without Pearson College, I will never be where I am right now. It opened for me every single opportunities. I didn't do really well with the IB, but that taught me that I could open my wings, open any door I wanted, and through hard work, I was able to go to university, to go to a master, to be with Marcia once in a while in the Netherlands, and to do what I have been doing for the last, 30 years. I have seen the Bosch College, I have seen the Singapore, the Hong Kong, Mahindra, Pearson College, and I believe the UWC movement makes a difference. I am also extremely happy when I see that the WCE movement has a partnership with refugees, with UNHCR, and then some refugees actually go to the colleges. But then I have two issues. One is current, and one is with this opening to other type of individuals, which is along the lines of what we were discussing. A refugee with no education, or a refugee that had to suffer like I had to suffer, going to Canada without any level of English, without being able to communicate, and a refugee who doesn't have a formal education, is the person ready to succeed in the college? My point of view will be yes, because the college is not about the IB. The IB is secondary. The IB is part of the formal education. The PC experience is something else. The PC experience is about understanding, having an opportunity, failing. You can fail, and it's okay, because you need to be able to continue with your life, and you are able to when you have a social network that allows you to have that special support that maybe you never had. And that is the case of a refugee in a United World College, or an orphan from SOS Children's Village. That is a unique opportunity. Now, at the same time, the WC movement is on top of the IB scale. When you think about the best schools with the IB, you think about the United World Colleges that started with the IB and the United Nations School, I don't know how many years ago. So, and whether we like it or not, directors and professors and the institution also cares to keep the final IB average really high. So how can we balance those two things in order to be able to support those individuals who don't have the necessary academic language tools to be able to succeed, and at the same time to get the experience that everybody deserves in a UWC. So that is one issue. And the last issue, sorry, Eddie, I take 2 minutes and then I pass it, but the next issue is the situation that we are living now. I am fortunate to have, after I think many years of hard work, of volunteering, I have a position that allows me to give I will say, extremely good education to my children. And yes, my 9 years old goes to a private school because, private school because public schools here in Brazil are terrible. And my boy, during the year and a half of COVID, he has been able to go to school every single day. And at some point, he had to do teleworking, and the school lent him a computer, and he was studying 10 meters away from where I was working here at home. But when I see the reality of his cousins, that go to public schools here in Brazil, because my wife is Brazilian, so he has family members here in Brazil. There is a cousin, he is also 8 or 9 years old, and she's going to a school. She had teleschooling, virtual schooling, 1 hour per week. So how can an 8-year-old be able to learn anything in 1 hour per week tele classroom? And that is the reality of a Brazilian country that is the size of a continent. With 230 million people, the number of Brazilians who are able to go to private schools and are able to have computers and internet and a classroom of 10 people because the school wants to have the social distance, is just the top of the social class in the country. And this is the same thing that is happening in Ecuador and Peru and Colombia, probably not in Canada, probably not in certain places in the US, but we are talking about the majority of the earth having a group of children, adolescents that are not able to receive a decent education because of the pandemic. And maybe we don't feel it now, but let's wait 5 years, 10 years. The people who will be able to pass an exam and to go to a WOC are those people who were able to benefit for the best schooling from throughout their whole life. And pandemic didn't matter to them because they have a laptop, because they have a cell phone, because they are able to receive classes through internet. And the impact, I just cannot imagine. I feel happy that my children have the opportunity. I feel happy that your children have opportunity, but I feel extremely worried about the majority of the population that don't have that chance. And then what is our role and how we should be prepared as the UWC movement to give a chance for those people who are left behind. And that is the saddest thing, they are left behind. So I stop.
Thank you so much, Jose. As you can tell from the reactions, you're speaking to many hearts with what you said. I'm conscious of the time. I'm available, so I want to hang out as long as people need to hang out. But if you need to go, that is okay. Jaylene, I think your hand is up.
Yes, I just have really appreciated participating today, and I wanted to share something that Simon and Sonia had shared with me when we met at the UWC virtual campus, and that was that in New York, in their school district, they estimate about the school system there has lost track. Because of the pandemic, they've lost track of about 30% of their students who have not connected regularly. And that's in New York. So, I mean, imagine other parts of the world where, that are not as affluent. I mean, that was pretty stunning to me. So there will have to be some sort of reform or some sort of catch up or something put in place to and they estimate a lot of these kids, or some of the kids, particularly older ones, will just not engage with school again, which is sad as well. But hopefully there will be some efforts made on a policy level to try to, embrace those kids again and get them caught up.
Excellent point. I mean, it's well documented that one of the things that the pandemic has done is highlight and deepen the inequities that existed already, right? Which again makes conversations about homeschooling and unschooling really intriguing, because we're talking about having to take a critical look at the traditional statutes that stand and define education and saying, it's not working. It's not working for those who learn differently. It's not working for those who have limited resources. It's not working for those who are born into poor circumstances materially. It's simply not working. And accepting the status quo is not what UWC graduates are about. And so I'm reading the chat. I have lots and lots of misgivings about my time at UWC, but on the other hand, it is what has brought me to a table like this, right? To a conversation like this. So I have to keep that in balance. And I love that you use that word balance, Jose, because I think it's a seminal word for all the stuff that we're talking about. Now, any more thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I had just a parting thought to share. I think in the school system that I'm a part of, we are at a point where, looking at Pakistan, about 45% of kids of school going age, primary and secondary included, are out of school. And roughly half of the kids who are in school are not learning well. We can see the data is shouting at us that the country just doesn't have the money. And I do think it does, at some level, does come down to money and also governance. we just don't have it to make all those kids go through what we call schooling today. And so we're forced to do what you're saying, Eddie. We're forced to go back to some basic questions like, okay, what do I need them to have? I can't just leave them. They can't be left behind. So I need them to know how to read the world around them, to be able to navigate their way through it. And I need them to have some life skills for a world which all of us don't know what it'll look like. We don't know what professions they'll be. And so we are going back to basics and trying to redefine what out of school education could be like. It has to be contextualized, it has to be relevant to their surroundings, has to be incredibly low cost, it has to be decentralized. And I think until we do that, we will not really be able to solve for most of humanity's kids, as you just put it. We won't be able to solve for them because there's just not enough time or money to erect schooling as we know it for everyone.
Caroline.
I know Aura and Caroline. Yeah, Caroline, go ahead.
Thanks a lot for this conversation. It's really made me think about a lot of points, and in particular, the link between education and economic survival, in a way. I'm just wondering to what extent going through school in Pakistan, for example, really does allow you to get to that better life, if I may say. And I put it on chat. I think there's a movie called Schooling the World that's available free online by Carol Black, that's set in Ladakh. And I think I put Bhutan in the chat. I don't know why. That's very interesting in that respect. And I put it in some other chat. There's a part where my heart really broke when I saw this old lady talking about herself as being ignorant, and her kids have gone to school and they've left the village. And she says she's ignorant, yet she knows how to survive at home. She knows how to look after the field. She has so many skills and so much wisdom. And her kids have gone to school, and then they go to the city and they live. I mean, they survive economically, but I don't know if their life really are better. I mean, it's difficult for me to say that because I come from a privileged background and I'm very, very aware of it. So I don't feel like it's my place to say that, but this movie really made
redefine success, in fact.
Exactly. Yeah, especially now in light of the climate crisis, to be honest. I mean, when we had the water crisis in Cape Town, and I had to think about where would I get drinking water in 3 days' time if my tap stops running, it really made me rethink our whole relationship to our environment, not just natural, but like our environment, social, political, natural, of course, but anything. Yeah.
Excellent point about.
So Eddie, I do suggest that we wrap this up in the next 2-3 minutes.
Okay.
And maybe take some parting thoughts, because this thing is so close to all our hearts. We could go on.
That's very true. All right, I'll give Q and Amanda their 30 seconds, and I'll close us out.
Thank you. So thank you. I just on that thought about the old lady in Bhutan, and she has her own knowledge and stuff. I just wanted to say about like how dyslexia and ADHD and stuff are all called like learning disabilities. Well, they're only like a learning disability if it's the way that it's being taught. It's not the fact that it is actually a disability. It's just a different way of thinking. I just wanted to say that just real quick.
It's a superpower. It's a superpower. Oh, can I just ask one thing? Is there any way we can make a copy or keep of the chat? Because it was really hard to read the chat, and I was really interested in reading.
I'll save it.
Yeah,
I'll save it, Amanda, and we'll share it like a document.
Thank you, because I really appreciated everybody's input and everyone's openness, and really appreciate everyone's connection with all of that. Thank you.
Q.
Just want to share my optimism.
Go ahead.
Which is in 1999, I was a trainee teacher, and it was the first year in the Teachers College where they started talking about learner-centered education and not teacher-centered education. Everyone was doing like, what the fuck is that? And I'm like, I experienced it in Pearson. I'm very fortunate. And now a generation down of teachers who were not taught how to teach in that way, but had learned as adults how to do it. Now in Singapore, we have teachers who were taught in a learner-centered way, right? In formal education, learner-centered. So there's that shift. So I guess I'm optimistic, right? That if enough of us do what we can wherever we are on this planet as a collective. One of my PhD mates is a community leader of the Karen State, and I have access now to the education department, and I hope to plant in the national education system UWC ethos. You know, so I'm not saying that that's going to happen, and after I get my PhD, whatever that means, but more importantly, because I'm married to Aura, I have clout with the ministries of education in this part of the world. Then I can knock on the door and say, dude, you guys want to start talking about transformative learning in the national education systems? Let's talk. Right. So I guess what I'm trying to get at that simply is it's a big pile of shit, and if every one of us take a small bite out of it, we'll work through our way through this, you know. So thank you.
Thank you so much. First, thank you to Zia for the brilliant start to the conversation. And thank you to everyone for joining. Hippo is not on here, but he put in the chat something along the lines of, I think he said, art is a really hard way to make money, but it's full of joy. And I think it's a bit of an oversimplification, but I think part of what we've been trying to fight for in terms of equitable, just education is to make that dichotomy false, right? That you can't have a comfortable life and joy at the same time. And so sometimes our conversations are, at least those of us who are steeped in it, can have a very doom and gloom tone to it. So I appreciate the optimism of Q and Aura. I appreciate the comfort of a setting like this that reminds us that you're not alone, whether you're trying to make sure that the plumber and the professor are both valued, whether you're trying to teach values to your kids so it doesn't end up in your basement, whether you're giving us doses of reality like Itai does. Amy's point was that in every corner, in every pocket, it is inspiring for me to know that Jose and Kanta and Amanda and Caroline and Angela and everybody else is working in their own small world to make sure that we leave this world better than we found it. So thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll see you in some other Zoom calls.
Thank you, guys. Loved having you here.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, guys. See you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Eddie, don't forget you owe me an email. I'm just teasing.
I know, Amy. I'll call you. I'll do you one better. I'll call you.
Okay, all right. I'm looking forward to it, my friend.
All right.
I got lots of things to talk about.
Yes,
Take care, everyone.
All right,
bye.
Marilyn, so good to see you too.
You too. Bye.
All right, if I end it.